my cousin. And she lived her life in New York, and I lived my life in Connecticut for a bit, and then London, and completely separate lives, not really knowing each other's journeys at all. But yet, many years later, we found ourselves, me running a drama school, her teaching movement, first at Yale as an assistant to someone there, if I remember. I can't remember who. Sita, you'll have to remind me.
Simpson.
Yeah. And then, after many years of dance, trapeze, and lots of work in New York, Sita is now just through, and this is the bit, I mean, we were talking about this the other day, but everything learned on their feet, learned through doing, learned through drama, learned through craft and practice, and that work has taken her to be a professor, a teacher. What is the technical term?
My technical title?
Yes.
It's lecturer in discipline. It's bizarre.
Lecturer in discipline at Columbia University Schools for the Arts. And so I was having conversations with her over the last couple of weeks, and it was just interesting because she's on the front line in the classroom, now in the Zoom room, working with movement pedagogies and working with improvisation, and she's having to figure it out on the floor. And so it's about hearing those stories and sort of being, now let's go to grounding ourselves into the work. And after that, I'm also hoping to get somebody in who's been working a lot with voice and speech similarly, and you can look forward to that. A couple of things about the format. Until now, I have been curating these, but it is open to those of you who are regular here and are interested and would think that so-and-so would be an interesting person to have in the conversation. My request is, tell us whom, make the introductions, we'll set it up, and one of you can be in the chair where I am sitting whilst we invite that other person into the family to have a conversation with us. Okay? Quick context for those of you who haven't been here before, and welcome, really happy to see new faces. Unrehearsed Futures is really us selfishly at one level asking as a drama school, what do we do next? Because we don't know quite yet. We are figuring it out, we are shaping things, and I will tell you that the conversations we've had so far have really helped us think about how we want to shape our future courses and make our future commitments to students who decide to enroll in a drama school. The big questions are the questions that you would have seen. How do we teach in the absence of presence? What is our social contract now with the students of theatre or students who want to study theatre? And then the question of, well, are they studying theatre or are they studying something more? And these become the kind of bigger overarching questions. The way the format works is that we ask Sita for her opening remarks, and she'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes sharing her stories, sharing whatever she's had in terms of insights from a few prepared statements. I will have some questions that come up after that. And then beyond that, really, very quickly move to conversation. And in today, I am come from speech and text and direction. I am not deeply rooted in movement and somatic practice myself personally. So I will be in a quick hurry to bring those who are rooted in movement and somatic practice to enter the conversation and start having their conversations. And I have to thank a couple of you here for encouraging people who have movement and somatic practice background to encourage their fellow movement and somatic practice people to come in. Without further ado, Sita, thank you so much for doing this and being here. And we all look forward to hearing from you.
It's a pleasure. I'm really happy to be here. Lovely to see some familiar places. Hi, Kriti. So
you remembered. Hi, thank you.
I always remember faces and people. I don't always remember names, but I remembered your name. So you're lucky. I'm not old enough yet to be losing that as well. But when I work with someone, I tend to remember them. So what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about what I do and where I do it, so you have a context for whatever information I bring. And then I will go to, I don't know if you want me to start talking about, Jehan, if you want me to start talking about how we handled what happened where I'm working, or if you want to just come in with questions right away. What would you prefer? Would you like that to be part of my intro?
Let's start with, yeah, let's do both of those things. And at some point we'll launch from there.
Okay.
Does that work for everyone?
Okay. So I'm a movement person. I have many, many years of dance, professional dance. I started here in India as a musical theater dancer, and then I moved to New York and I studied at Alvin Ailey. I did modern dance. Was not happy with that. Started to get interested in physical theater. I wanted more than just the movement for the sake of movement. I started to get interest also on my own personal journey. I started to get interested in, you know, what makes a human being tick, my need to understand others for personal reasons as well. And my interest in sort of taking apart why I was doing dance when it was, you know, such a painful relationship. You know, there's just so many wonderful dancers in New York, and to get a job was hell. And I couldn't give it up. Every time I left, I came back. So I was sort of taking apart, what is this movement about for me? And on that journey, I did some acting conservatory work as a student. I came across Faith Simpson. Some of you may have heard of her, who founded the Lucid Body Technique. And, you know, and she was teaching movement for actors, and she said, come along. We were in a meditation class together, and she said, come along. And I said, okay, I'll try it out. And I was sitting in the class going, what are all these people doing, making all this noise and screaming and shouting and crying? This is hysterical. I'm not going to do this. I can't. And then there was this little voice inside me that said, wait a minute. Until you can do what you're being asked to do, maybe you should stay and find out. And I'm very grateful for that voice. I don't know where it came from, but it kept me there. And that opened up a whole new road of possibility for me. I stayed with Faith Simpson, assisting her, studying with her and assisting her for 8 years. And then during that time, I had started, I'd gone to massage therapy school so I could make a living. I'd gone to Feldenkrais Institute after massage therapy because I realized there's something that's happening in human bodies when I'm working on them as a massage therapist, where something gets fixed and then it comes back, and what's that about? And so unbeknownst to me, I was gathering a ton of information that was setting me up perfectly to work with actors. And in 2008, somebody gave me a break and said, we need a movement for actors teacher. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. They said, you're welcome to come try. And I started in a 1-year conservatory program, and I just fell in love with it. So I started working with actors, bringing all of my background. I also do a lot of meditation. I brought that in. And the Feldenkrais and the meditation sort of started to create a container for my work, which is this idea of awareness, that the more awareness you have, the more choice you have. And how is that relevant for actors and what is needed? And then I started sitting in with a number of acting teachers to understand what is needed for an actor to be able to really tell the story of someone else, become someone else for an instant in a way that's safe for them, where they can return and their lives aren't affected and yet is believable. So that's how I started. And then somewhere along the line, Columbia University decided they were interested in this. And I've been working there for 3 years. I started out as the first year acting teacher because I do fundamentals. Feldenkrais is not all I do, but it's, I believe, deeply, deeply, deeply in it. It is the thing that makes people aware and change. And from there, any other physical discipline, I believe, works better, can be more deeply learned and more quickly learned. So I started as the first year acting movement teacher. And the second year, they bumped me up to head of movement. They wanted to create that title. They wanted to redo the movement department. They asked me if I was interested. Well, they sort of held me to gunpoint. I felt like I wasn't ready, but I'm there and that's what I'm doing. So I'm also now getting to have these conversations about what it is we're doing in the training as a whole, what it is we're doing in movement and body awareness practices and what place they have in the training. And now how do we do this given what has happened to us? Yeah. So March 8th, we finished our callbacks. For the class of 2023, we have a 3-year program. It's a graduate program. We were thrilled with the class that we had picked. And we went home and we were told we couldn't go back the next day. And we have not gone back since. Our first year class was given a choice. We had a lot of meetings with them. Each of the full-time faculty talked to them to say, this is what we feel we can offer you, because we are not definitely going back in the fall and we don't know what will happen in the spring semester. They did a lot of thinking and they decided, unfortunately, Columbia is one of the most expensive acting programs. That's a whole other discussion about the kind of money that higher education takes from in acting training programs, but we won't go there. So they just decided that whatever it was they were getting, as excited as it sounded, the first year class deferred. We gave them an option and the entire first year class deferred. So we do not have an incoming class 2020 fall. Then we sat down to work on what we could do with the second and third years, and they've been very much a part of that discussion. So the first thing we had to deal with was the semester we were in the middle of teaching, right? So here I'm going to talk a little bit about how I think about training an actor physically, right? For me, there's 2 parts. One is training the instrument, the body-mind instrument, right? And then the second part is artistic process. For me, those are 2 separate things that are both very important somatic trainings. And I think that it's important to separate them, at least in the teacher's mind. So in terms of the actor's instrument, I think of teaching awareness, cultivating physical intelligence, right? To understand my instrument so I can make it go and do what I need it to do, and to work with it and not against it. That's sort of what I mean by physical intelligence, working in an intelligent way so that your instrument comes with you. Because your instrument is run by a nervous system. It's not, you know, a piece of metal or a piece of wood. The last thing that is very much part of the physical instrument training is conditioning. And conditioning is not only like finding ways to keep an actor fit so that they can do what is physically demanded of them in any kind of situation or any kind of work that they may choose to do, but also conditioning the nervous system, because we do intimacy work. We don't understand, most of us, what happens to us when our bodies come in contact or even in proximity to another human being. So starting to develop a little awareness around that. And you also, I have found, need to condition yourself to be able to make choice while you're in that responsive state, because you want yourself to be affected and yet you don't want to be so affected that you're out of control. So there's that conditioning, and there's also conditioning to what do I do when I'm doing sensual contact, sexual contact, and aggression work. So I do conditioning with them for that before they go into their stage combat class. So everything that I do, I consider is building a foundation for a human being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, artistic being, to take on then techniques. So I don't consider what I do a technique. Given that this is what I think my task is, when we were told we couldn't be in rooms, my first response, and maybe very human, was, oh my God, I can't deal with this. And then panic. And then the second response was really a curiosity started to wake up. It's like once I dealt with the fact that, well, I have to do this. No one's giving me a choice. I have to get online Monday morning and I have to come up with something on Zoom. I started to see it as an opportunity to ask myself what it was that I was doing again, clarify what I thought needed to be done, because I believe that if I know what I'm doing and the other person is with me, I can find some way to do it in the conditions that we have. And this is very much part of the gifts of the Feldenkrais training. Moshe Feldenkrais said, if you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. And I've studied this and thought about this and practiced this, and I found this to be very true. So in the spring semester, I started by saying, let me try a Feldenkrais class. Everybody's lying on the mat in their little square. Columbia takes a class of 18, so I'm dealing with 18 people at a time. But I've had, even with my first years, I now teach first, second, and third year, but the first years have had 6 months with me. So they sort of know how to do a Feldenkrais lesson. So I want to share with you just my findings without going into too much detail. Feldenkrais and Alexander, I work very closely with our Alexander teacher, and she's one of my teachers as well. We both found it's great and they love it because it helps them be in their bodies for the rest of the day on Zoom. It helps them stay with awareness, and also it helps them to be in your own space. Lying on a mat with someone giving you instructions allows, I think students feel a little more sense of permission to rest when they want, to try something a little different. And therefore the learning in some ways deepens. It's exhausting for the teacher. I feel like I have to, zoom into every square and check on someone and give them some feedback and make sure I'm keeping the room going. My 6 weeks of the semester that I had left when this started, honestly, I was drained in a way that I had never experienced. And I'm slowly starting to find ways to think about how to deal with that, since the next upcoming year for me is now going to be on Zoom. Is set completely on Zoom, and I'll talk more about that choice later. So Feldenkrais is possible. New conditioning exercises, I tried to teach some of the stuff that was left on my syllabus for that semester, where they were doing stretches and breath work, yoga-based stretches and breath work that I wanted them to have before they went off for the summer. That was a little risky. It's not ideal to teach it. I was able to be creative, but mostly because I then took one-on-one tutorials with them and worked with their difficulties, because to manage a whole new group of 18 people doing stretches to keep them safe and to deal with them individually and find the way they should do that so that they get the benefit and they don't hurt themselves. It was not easy, and it's not something I don't think it's something that I'm going to do going forward. I would rather teach a person new movement when I am with them, if it's risky. Physical risk conditioning was out of the question. It requires me to be there, to be able to put hands on the person, to be able to watch them and sense them and feel them and stay by them and hold the space of the 2 or 3 students that work together. So anything that was nervous system conditioning for discomfort and system disruption, I don't think is a good idea. I started doing some of it in one-on-ones. So in my tutorial time, I did that, and that was very effective. I give them little tasks. They do it with me. We talk about how they're experiencing it. They go off and practice it. We talk after a week. That way I feel like I can be responsible for them moving into disruption, is the word Jehan uses. Yeah, and it's disruption of the nervous system, which is such a huge part of the training. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit. I use a lot more one-on-ones. It's also tiring, but it's helpful. I find it very helpful in this kind of a platform to do less group time and more one-on-one time. I think the students benefit. We can do more together in a short time if I've spent more time setting each person up. Also, there's been I found I can go for 3 hours short, 3 hours long, and I thought for a long while that the students were with me because I was excited and I was interested and connected. But when you're sitting and listening to someone or watching 2 other people work, the attention on a screen, as many of you have probably found already weeks ago, is just not easy to do. It's exhausting. The mind wanders. It's not you. It's the platform and the conditions. So I did teach 3-hour classes all through the fall all through the spring because that was required. But we are not going to do that anymore. I am not going to do that anymore. When I'm given a 3-hour slot, it'll be an hour and a half of working together, warming up together, discussion, a little Q&A, and then once the artistic process assignments start, when people are doing scene work, monologue work, trying out something that I've given them, we do some moving from table to floor work, starting to take it out, the analysis out of your head and into your body. We do that with smaller groups now, and the others go off. Now, when you do this, you lose out on something, which is how we learn from watching each other. And I haven't figured out an answer for this yet. I do think that for now, until I figure out an answer, until any of my colleagues figure out an answer, it's better to have smaller groups and let the others go. Otherwise, it tends to, the tensions that build within the students come out into the room, and they add to the complexity of an already challenging situation between teacher and student. So what I do is I invite people if they want to stay and watch, but I'm working with these 2 people or these 4 people. And my concentration is on them and their questions and answers and their process.
Just out of curiosity on that last bit, how many students opt to stay and learn from others?
It depends on the cohort. It's, you know, over and over I've found teaching, every cohort has its own personality. Levels of interest change, the stage at which the students are at. Because when they come in the first year, there's a lot of undoing their ideas of things, getting to know them. And in that process, they get vulnerable. So they get kind of feisty and resistant. So depending where each person is in their individual process, I have some students that, you know, don't leave, even if I go into lunch break in the 3rd year, but in the 1st year, they were like out the door before the class was even over. They couldn't stand it. So I don't too much judge this. It's hard to function in an institution where they want you to track attendance and timing, because I think we're working with individuals. That's what's exciting to me. I'm getting to know them. I know they're going to get uncomfortable, and I know they're going to react. And that's something else that has in one way been harder to stay with them through that journey on Zoom. But in some ways, you know, they contact me and they know they can contact me for one-on-one time. And so we've actually had a lot more time together, some of us. So I think it's a mixed bag. In terms of the artistic process, the acting teachers, interestingly, took a step back when this happened at Columbia, and they felt they needed to think about this because we have a lot of very, very seasoned master teachers who we're very lucky to have, but then we are talking about people in their 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s. So this was a lot for them, and they wanted to take a step back going, well, we cannot imagine a world where people can do scene work when they are not in the same room together. Some of the other movement people and the voice people said, we think this is possible. I tried it. I had to take some lessons at the National Alliance of Acting Teachers in North America. They've been doing a lot of support technically, teaching us how to use Zoom, learning how to use breakout rooms. And so I found a way to do scene work. And I found that I can work with them when they move from table work onto their feet. We can have I'm sure many of you have tried a lot of these things as well yourselves. We can have just 2 windows up. I'm going to use all the wrong technical terminology. Just interrupt if you're not following me anymore. But we can have 2 windows up. Everybody else disappears but can watch. And I can coach them to move into their bodies. And what I've found, the gain of this situation is because it is so challenging to feel connected to the person when they're not in the room with you, that it forces you to deepen concentration. And I have experienced that the last 4 or 5 years of generations I taught concentration is an issue. Deepens your concentration. If you want to do it, if you have the desire to do it, it forces you to cut out the rest of your own internal monologue and the rest of the world and really stay with the person. So concentration and listening, the skill of listening, which is such a huge one for our work. When I listen to someone, am I listening? Am I receiving? You all know what I'm talking about. Those of you who are people who are teaching. I know there's a mix here of students and teachers, so I'm sort of trying to balance what I'm saying. So forgive me if I'm.
That's great.
Yeah. So teaching them to listen and to be affected and to believe that, because right now you and I can get into a conversation and we can feel very strongly about what we're saying. And I was watching this in our faculty conferences, and I was watching this in the National Alliance meetings I was in. And I went, well, we're doing scenes all the time. We're doing scenes all the time. So we can believe that this means something to us. I've had the immense privilege of working with Ron Bandu for 3 years. He was the head of acting at NYU for about 18 or 20, and then at Yale School of Drama for 12. And then in his retirement, he came to us for a while. He's still with us, although I think the next year might be his last. And he always says, if I teach you nothing else, I'm going to give you one sentence. Acting is breathing and believing. But when he says that, he means so much. And I've been thinking on this, and you know, I've literally cultivated exercises around a deeper and deeper understanding of this. And this imaginary muscle that you need to cultivate to be able to believe to the degree that you can to transform yourself in the moment. It's really, really, really a huge opportunity here on Zoom that we have, because you are forced to do that if you want to do the work. Otherwise, you're going to sit on the surface of it. And I had some resistant students. I had many of them jump in. I had people who were resistant. But something that I'm really excited about is by the end of the semester, I saw growth in all my students' scene work. I mean, without an exception. We took our time. There were things lost in terms of, you know, they got bored, everyone else got irritated, but we did it. I did it with each of them because I had felt the need to not let anyone feel excluded or left behind because they're quiet in a corner or on the next page of my screen. And it changed my mind. And I talked to one of the acting teachers and I said, would you come in? Because now I'm at a loss. My specialty, my knowledge, my expertise is in getting them into the body, but I don't know this play well enough. I don't know where they need to go next. So then we collaborated. So the last few weeks, I took them on to their feet with the scene that he had given them. And then we co-taught, we gave them feedback together and they found it extremely helpful. And that's where we ended the semester from the point of view of my work. Our students then chose, we worked with them and the faculty and the administration to decide what they wanted to do. They chose not to come back into rooms. Our directing program, our dramaturgy program, our stage management, producers program, and all wanted to come back into rooms as soon as it was allowed. The actors said no. Some of our actors have, are immune suppressed. Some of them are living with elderly parents, and some of our teachers are older. So the students as a group said, we are absolutely not willing to consider this. And then that left us with the job of finding a way to teach them online for a year, which for me, again, felt like I still am struggling with that a lot. I need people, I need to be close to people. So this is something I'm learning. How do we contact each other? And I think they're all struggling with it. And I think one thing I've been trying to do is not lie to them when they're talking to me about their difficulties, when they're talking to me about their fears and challenges. I'm open with them about mine. But I find that, of course, being so many years ahead of them, not even necessarily wiser than all of them or knowing more than some of them in some areas, but I always have something that I can offer because I have the objective perspective, both of age and experience, and of not being in their shoes because they've put down so much money and their work has been, their life's dream has been disrupted right in the middle of their training. So I try and be honest with them, and I found they find it very helpful. That's all I can say. I say if I don't know the answer, I say how I think about it when I have this challenge, when I have this fear, and they find that helpful. And I root everything, and this is just, I'm lucky like that with my work, in Feldenkrais and mindfulness principles, compassion practice principles, because that's such a big part of our work. We share that vocabulary. And so I try and keep my position as their teacher and not become their therapist by speaking in that vocabulary, keeping our conversations, though they get very personal in those terms, so that they feel held, but they're also continuing to do the work. And the last thing I'll say before I open this up for questions and discussion is that I seriously, deeply believe an institution won't like this. A 3-year program can't look at things this way, or a 1-year program can't look at things this way. But for me, if you have a year to live in a state of challenge, in a state of fear, in a state of not knowing what comes next, you are developing your humanity if you choose to see it that way. And if you see, if it's how you're looking at your experience, you're constantly training for what you need to be an actor. And I've said this to my students, I believe it, I'm taking it that way myself. I fall on my face, I get frustrated, I tell myself I'm full of shit sometimes, but I really deeply believe it and I come back to that. And so far, the interactions I've had with my students over the summer, and because we are not dealing with one pandemic in North America, we are dealing with a double pandemic. We're dealing with Black Lives Matter. We're dealing with how our students feel, how our white students feel, how our colored students feel, how our faculties feel, what that means for the syllabus, not just how do we teach them a new syllabus that's interesting for a year on Zoom and keep them engaged, but how we have a chance to open everything up. Everything has been ripped open, and we can learn to breathe and go one step at a time. I think very important to remember is I don't think that there's a right answer. I think we all are wondering, well, what's the answer to this? And I don't think there's an answer. We're progressing through the unknown, and actually it's what we're doing every day. Not to the degree that we are doing it now, and not with the level of unknowns that any of us have now. But we're doing something we do every day, and it's heightened. And this means that the actor, the theater artist, and artist in general is living in conditions that cultivate their skills. That's where I am right now.
Wow. You've almost given me a sense of like the idea of this disruption as drama school, because this disruption is actor training, which it seems to be.
Right. I mean, it needs to be held. It can't just be vague. It's just like, I just went and lived my life and I did, I mean, so you have to give it a container. But that depends on what your institution or your personal goal is. You can give it that container. And I just think it also helps us move through this.
Thank you for that story. Thank you for those stories, Sita. I think it's been really encouraging, because to hear the story of the dialogue between the students and the school at every stage, be it at a bigger level and the macro institutional level, and both at this sort of level within your own practice. I also really quite enjoy the idea of like how just the life lessons of Feldenkrais, the life lessons of your own personal journey and your own personal way of attacking the world as a human being seems to be also resonating all the way through your teaching and then into your department. I've taken away the idea of not knowing alongside another faculty member who doesn't know the story of the acting faculty member who came in and worked with you, and really thought about the idea of two faculty members. I hadn't thought about this before, but two faculty members looking at each other saying, okay, we don't know, let's go figure it out together. And that's really encouraging. There are some questions, but I will really open this fast. I'm going to start with one question and one sort of uh, 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 one or two ideas, because it also builds from stuff that happened across Drew's session and Felipe's session, which were the last two, which is where there's this, wow, Daniel's got a big question and Madhu has one before that. We'll go to those in a second. But you spoke about how there are certain things you cannot do in your basic movement classes because of the safety, because you needed to be in the room with them, hands-on. However, you've put those on a shelf for now, is my understanding, and you're working with the things you can work in, and you can look at what possibilities. I'm an acting teacher. I teach scene study. And on that front, I get that you've got their focus is much higher. They have to cultivate the muscle of believability much higher. But I was talking to someone about this a few weeks ago, because it has to do with, we teach them, I was talking about them in the context of like, what do you teach them first? What do you teach them next? How do you build something? And in mediated medium like this. But in this particular question, how do I go to push and pull? How do I go to the things that I would have felt in an acting class when I was in the space with them, the things that have been denied to me because of this mediated space, those are not going to be there. So that's part of the loss, or have you found another way of working with it? Because you said we get them on their feet and they start to work. But if it's a scene between two people, I mean, share a eureka moment that tells you that no, they felt like they were coexisting in imagined time and space. I mean, is that what happened in a scene study class with you, for example?
Yes, when we got them on their feet, I just felt like it was possible. When I saw what was possible with breakout rooms and with putting on and off videos and hiding video participants, and somebody else, it was a huge. This is not my discovery. It was a huge collaboration, and I can't even tell you how many voices went into me realizing that what I do, to right up to the end of getting them in their bodies in a scene, in a relationship, in an energetic relationship that is believable, was possible, was with all these little bits of help from the National Alliance of Acting Teachers, the technical help that we got from some people who had understanding of how to use Zoom, discussions about what it is, what a scene really is, and how that can happen.
But what kind of what was a voice from the National Alliance, for example, about the content? Let's forget about the technical Zoom medium for a bit. Right. But like, what was something that helped you, like something a little bit like, I'm not getting a picture in my head of that.
I'm not sure what your question is. I'm going to start, but just interrupt me if it's not going down the path. So do you want me to describe how they came to be in a point where we felt like we were almost watching a movie, with just that we had a line between the two people?
Yeah.
How did that happen is what you're asking.
Yeah. What were the things? Yes. And what were the things that you were struggling with because of the media? Okay. Here's the question. Obviously, because now we're teaching across Zoom versus in a real room, there are new challenges. And then the National Alliance, for example, gave you some ideas. Other people gave you some ideas.
Right. And then I used my tools. The tools I used what they already know. I used everything that they already know with me, that we already work on, to say, have you engaged this? Have you engaged that? Have you engaged this? Right? So there's a technique that I use in terms of when emotion is getting heightened, to feel they need to feel the sit bone. It works with the nervous system and the feet, and to continue breathing and bring the attention back. Because a lot of these techniques that Alexander Feldenkrais, a lot of these kinds of techniques are given, but then the student goes off in their world and does them, and they leave the scene. So I said, okay, so we're practicing this returning. Returning is a big thing for us, right? Use your technique in return. So I keep them using techniques, so their mind is taken off, and suddenly the scene is happening. and suddenly they've forgotten and they're lost in a conversation. The way you and I right now are looking at each other and so interested in what we're saying, we're not thinking, are we doing a scene, but we're doing a scene.
So you can
And
get to that place.
yes, you can get to that by taking your mind off how difficult it is and what's not happening, and focusing on what you know how to do. That puts you in your body, that brings all of your being to be engaged in the material. So that you forget, exactly like you do in a room, so that you forget the things that get in your way in a room. It's the same way you forget the things that get in your way on a screen.
So that comes to the second bit. Now, that almost tells me a story of an actor taking a mid-shot where his co-actor is not there during a film reading, but they do it so well that when it all cuts together, it works. But in the live performing medium that we work at, there's just this one more idea of, so fine, they're in the work, they're leaning on the material completely, or they're bringing the material to life completely, but there's that response, there's that physiological response that happens between two people in a space. That information is denied to them here, which also added something to the scene, right? What of that?
Right. I think you've got less coming in to feed you, is sort of what you're describing to me. So you have to work on what you've got. Now, theater artists are really good at that. We know how to make something of what we've got. And my job is to make sure they cultivate that ability in themselves. So that's what, and some do better and some do worse, and they come back the next day. But then, because this semester I kept everyone in the room while people were working, they inspired each other. Some said, I'm not doing this. This is not possible. And I'm not even interested. They were so upset by the situation that they were like, I'm not even doing this. This feels stupid. And I'm like, well, we're going to sit here and I can direct you, or you can be quiet and we're going to do it because your time is your time. So some did it and some didn't. But when they saw it working, they got excited. And I'm saying that I saw them grow, but they expressed that they finally felt what they had been craving and missing since they had not been allowed to be in a room together. Now, none of them are going to tell you that it's as good, and I'm not going to tell you it's as good. But it is possible in that way to continue training. And the things that we are capable of strengthening will serve us, I believe, when we get back in rooms. That's what I'm saying. I don't think this is a substitute. I have great hope and desire, deep desire for physical theater to come back as soon as possible. How and when, and I know this was part of conversations you had in the last two afternoons together. But I'm just going, let's do what we can, and I think it's a lot more than you think it is. If you come in the room with all you can bring to the table, and I come in and we go, this is what we're going to try. Let's try things. And not, yeah.
So let me take a few questions from the group. Madhu, you talked about BKS Iyengar and holding the breath is holding your soul, and you're teaching with Kathak and contemporary dance, but you wanted Sita to share some breathwork experience with you. Do you feel like the question of returning kind of answered that, or would you like more in terms of an idea there? Is Madhu there?
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I got it. I was getting all mixed up. Sita, I was just saying thank you so much. I mean, there are so many takeaways from what you're sharing. One of them being, opening up our vulnerabilities more in order to empower the student. I think more of us are doing that, to say, I can't do this either, but let's try. And the breath work, I notice also, is helping us connect more deeply with our bodies. And, you would just keep about 10 minutes in a class for that earlier, but now it's kind of keeling over into 40 minutes almost. And people need it. I just thought if we could share an experience or probably a little exercise while we're here, we'd all, I'm sure, like to just join in the somatic experience.
I don't know if that's the context. That's up to up to Jehan.
I think what I'll do is ask Sita. She'll come back and run a couple of classes with us at some point in the future, and we'll do it.
Of course, yeah.
Otherwise, the exercise will take us the rest of the session.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I was just being greedy. So, I mean, if you could just share, because you did mention that has become a large part of your, knowledge transference in a sense, and also experience as a group.
Yeah. Daniel has got a question for a multiple group of people in the room. Daniel's telling you about a story he's got, and he's getting back into this space, and he's going to have rules and rehearsal, zero physical contact, etc. I think John's question also continues on that, is like what happens with contact, connection, and ensemble can mean if we do not touch. Where is touching an easy substitute for deeper contact? So that's one. So this question of when we do get back into spaces together, and we still have the absence of touch. You spoke a lot about your intimacy work and building on your intimacy work. You talk about intimacy work at different levels before they go for stage combat. So what do you have thoughts on what happens when you go back into a space but you're not allowed to touch and everyone has to be working at 5 feet distance? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, of course I have. I'm the type who thinks of a ton of little things, and then I need to get in and get my hands on the situation. Then I know the situation, and then it all comes together. But I'll tell you what's coming to my mind. First off, I don't think anything. I'll say that there's never going to be anything that satisfies in the particular way or tells a story in the particular way that contact does. That said, you already said it. I don't know who wrote part of what you were reading. Maybe it was John. We are always working with them. Is touching the easy way out and doesn't make you work for what you're trying to get or work for what you're trying to communicate? Or is it making you hide from the fact that it's too vulnerable to do this particular thing any other way? And so while I haven't been in a room yet with people to try, I do take that angle. It's like, all right, well, you're 6 feet apart or 8 feet apart or all the way across the room. When we do a little section of training at the end of the first year after they've gotten comfortable with some contact and intimacy on, seduction, just what that is, because that ends up being something that everybody sort of falls flat on. Either they think they know what they're doing and they're completely desensitized, or it's the other extreme, right? So we work like that. Are you going to be able to do something with just hand-to-hand contact? Can you do something with full body, torso-to-torso contact? What happens to you? How do you respond? How can you direct yourself? Get to know yourself first. How do you neutralize yourself? And then same thing across the room. So now we have just across the room. What is it that you need to get done? How are you being affected? And how can you direct how you're being affected to get you to the next step? And you can't touch. It's an obstacle, right? It's just another theater task. Now I'm sure when we get in the room and that's all we're allowed, it's going to be frustrating. But I will be starting there, and I will be building on that. All right. We can start at 6 feet apart. All right, now let's try 7 feet apart. Now let's try 8 feet apart, so that they just get used to trying to either allow themselves to experience, be affected, or respond and affect another person at distances. It'll be a new training, and we'll use our tools and we'll develop our tools from that. We'll use what we know, what we share together, and we'll go forward. I will say this. I have been thinking a lot about the way I work, and my situation is not that I have to work with people that I don't know, but in any case, the kind of work I do is I'm lucky enough to have developed to a point where I can work with people for 3 years, which is my dream, because I think it takes years to understand our body mind. We're complicated. It probably takes our whole lives, but when we have the tools, the journey begins. So I'm not someone who is the best person for a 2-day workshop, because I don't believe that you get a ton. I think people get a little bit, they start tasting. But if you're going to real deep cultivation of an artistic mind and instrument, it takes a long time. And I've gone off on a tangent now, and I don't know where I started.
No. That was a good answer to both John and Daniel's question. I think the other key question that comes from Michaela and Kali, and this is pressing for us, is we understand working with second year and third year students who've had some shared experience with you, and you can already build on a history that you've had with them in the room. I mean, this is something, by the way, that the drama school is facing. We're about to enter a space with new students and only in a mediated place. Right. Is the proposal that we are about to make to them. And if we make that proposal, the question that we're trying to figure out is really, if you look at Michaela's question, it's about like people with divergent vocabularies coming to a shared space. And Kali's question, which is, what are your thoughts about working with a batch with no foundation in their learning, who are at the very beginning of a particular journey? I mean, what would have happened if the students who chose to defer for 2024 had said, no, we're showing up?
That's what I'm going to answer, because we had to think about that, because they might have been showing up and we had to talk to them and tell them what we were going to offer if they were going to show up, so that they could just decide, right? So I did think about that, and thank you, because it brings me back to my tangent. That's where I was going. Is I can only yeah. I can only answer this very specifically in terms of what I do and what I know, and that is movement and the body, right? So I can't answer this for theater training in general or acting training even in general. But so I don't do well, as I said, with weekend workshops. I can't answer for if you're with someone for 2 minutes. I'll give it a shot because I have done some for professionals. But I think that we need to get to know who we're working with. I believe for acting training, I'm sure that many of you are teaching, are doing that already, right? Is that we're getting to know who is in front of us and how they respond to what we're giving them, how we can join what they have and move it forward and open it up so that they're really good at all this, and now they can see that, and then they become a bigger and bigger instrument. So what I said and what I was thinking, and I was actually kind of disappointed that they deferred, because I was looking forward to this, is that there will be a lot of one-on-one time. My assigned teaching time for the first years, I'll do all what would normally be tutorials over 2 semesters. I'll do it now. I want to know who you are. I want to know how you feel about your body. I want to know how you feel about being an embodied human being. I want to know if that makes any sense to you. I want to know how you think and why you're here and what excites you. I want to know what questions you have for me. I want you to know me so you can trust me. This is a lot of work that gets done in the first year, and it's very hard with a room full of people. And the fact that I would have had this opportunity of time to get to know them, I believed, I haven't tested it yet, but I believed would have put us on a much stronger footing, and we'd have been able to go much deeper, much faster when we were in rooms together.
And in all of that, you do anticipate, in all of that, you've got a, sorry, Sita, I interrupted.
No, I just wanted to say it's not the only part of it, right? We do want to come into a room. You do want to start creating an ensemble, right? But once you have the first meeting with everyone, you know what you can, where you can start, where you like to start and where you can start. And you do a little bit, you just do smaller chunks of material in a group. And then there's conversation and there's getting to know each other. And then you go back and you get to know them a bit more. You see how they're doing. I make my students write journals. They hate this. They fight me for 3 years. It's a nightmare to follow up and get all the assignments in. But every 2 weeks,
know about this.
You do, okay. They have to write a journal. It has a structure to it. Sometimes it has questions from the week's work. Sometimes I leave it to them because it makes them process. You were talking about this autodidact question, right? That's part of it. They have to process.
Reporting
How
the self.
Sorry?
Reporting the self.
Yeah, and when I know how the people are meeting what I'm offering them, in each of them individually, I can come back into a room with them on Zoom. I don't know if this answers the question, but it's this small stages of how are you doing? How am I doing? Let's try this. How are you doing? How am I doing? Let's try this. And I think it's forcing us into something that we don't do enough of when we have when we have the privilege of being in a room together.
So 2 spin-offs on that. Michaela, anything to add to that, or is that a clear thing? We are typing. Okay, great. But you guys can get off mic as well if you feel like it.
I could maybe
ask that same question of Kali. But go ahead, Michaela. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's, that's something that is happening already, especially in the audition process. So both Lambda and Oxford, where I work, are taking new groups of students for the uni. And it's happening in the audition process that we get in much more questions about themselves, but it feels like this medium brings a lot of talking. Yeah, so a lot of verb, and like what is the place for the non-verbal getting to know each other? I think it's a big question. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that gives us an insight on maybe an approach to our auditions when we have them, because we haven't figured out how we're going to have those. You said one more thing which I just wanted to go on. In these conversations, do you feel like, we talk about the teacher, Felipe talked about the teacher being that thing on a pedestal. I know that we've always wanted to teach on par with our students. This medium seems to demand that. Where is the onus of the learning now? Before, at the drama school, when I had everybody in a room, I really felt like a lot more onus on me to deliver a journey and to deliver a teaching journey. Do you feel like you have discovered or surprised yourself in any way with how much the students are capable of in terms of self-learning or in terms of figuring stuff out or connecting the dots themselves? And has your role changed at all as that quote-unquote teacher, or were you never like that in the first place? I don't know. This is
something you mentioned to me yesterday, and I've been thinking about. I think there's a certain, as I said, they do journals, they do assignments, they come back. So in that sense, they must have, for me, they must have experience for visceral learning to occur, right? And that has to be their own. It can't be what I tell them. So I wait and I watch for them to understand something, then I know I can take them to the next step. So that's in the training anyway. Now, what I found is sort of the opposite of what you've sort of been saying. Was I surprised by how much they take on? I actually find that I've really had to work twice as hard. I don't know if it's because I think we're dealing with young people, at least I'm dealing with young actors. They are dealing with a life crisis that at the same time emotionally, while they have to show up on Zoom and learn in a way that they don't want to learn. And I haven't yet seen that there's enough rigor. And I don't think it's just a case of this situation. This is something I've been talking about with colleagues for a long time. I think there's an issue with rigor. I'm going to say it, even though some people here might be in this generation, right? And it's something that I'm teaching. And I have to hold the space twice as hard on Zoom and say, you have to stay. And if you can't stay, let's talk about what's going on. I'm not going to like physically force anyone, but I'm trying to teach them rigor, and it has to be worked at twice as hard on Zoom than it does in a room. And so when an assignment is given, when a self-tape is done and sent to me, for example, when they do self-tapes and send them to me, either because they're auditioning for someone or because they just want to work on what their on-camera work is like. I don't find that they push themselves hard enough. They don't ask enough questions. They don't get uncomfortable enough unless I handhold them, right? I've actually been asking myself, is there something wrong in the training? Because I don't have an answer to this. If I don't handhold them, they don't go deep enough. If I keep handholding them to go deep, they will never do it themselves. And this is just something that I'm learning as a teacher. And I wonder if maybe we all figure this out for ourselves. But up to year 2, halfway through the second year, I handhold a lot, and I've had to do it twice as hard on this medium. After between your 2.5 and into the beginning of their third year, I let them just fall on their face and get yelled at by directors and scene study teachers, and then I'll gently go, see, you knew this, why didn't you, and we put a system in place. That's not all in place yet with my first years going into their second year, so I'm working really hard. They don't seem to tend to rigor on their own. Not all of them. I'm not going to make a generalization. And that perhaps is just my ego. I can see potential, and so I keep pushing. Yeah, maybe this is just a personal thing. I don't have a pedagogical answer to this, but pedagogically speaking, I think of it in terms of how much shall I hold? Like, it's a timing thing with each individual, where I'll hold and push and hold and push, and then I'm going to let you try on your own for a while and see what happens. And it's not just rigor, it's discipline. First of all, coming into contact with the acting world for me was a shock, because dancers have discipline.
Lakshika's nodding seriously.
So, yeah. So discipline is something I do. I don't believe in having it done the way I was done. I was literally hit with a stick in my ballet class. But I think that people need to be held accountable. And there needs to be something that happens if they're not. So it's a lot of work to create the autodidact an effective autodidact. I think that's my answer right now.
I want to put you in a room with Felipe, because Felipe was talking about how we have to lose the disciplinarity of institutions.
I heard the talk. I loved the talk. It was deeply inspiring to me. And I think he's right, because there's another aspect to this, is people come with passion. Young people come with passion and desire. And most of them, it's sincere. Some of them are in there for trying to realize the wrong thing, but most of them will be artists. And if you use that and access that, the discipline will develop. But it just takes some time.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're at 5:07. We kind of started the conversation at 4:07. I tend to let 10-minute spillover happen because there's just that much more to say. Yes, Aiden, there are recordings available of all the talks, but I'm not public. Yes, they're available, and they're available to you. You just have to ask for it one-on-one, and you'll get them happily. Sita, are you okay with me doing that with your talk as well? Absolutely. Great. Wonderful. I have to say, I'm really astounded by the level of global generosity, planetary generosity that I have witnessed over the last 3 months as I reached out and started these series of the Global Faculty Program and this. Kumuda, thank you for your question. I think that's an interesting one. So there's that question, and then there's anything else that anyone wants to just get off mic and, maybe not. I had hoped we would stop typing and start talking. So if anyone has anything else they'd like to sort of share to Sita, I think Sita had a good question as well. And Nikita had a question. Thank you, Shruti. Sorry. Nikita had a question which was around the change in syllabus. You've got 2 disruptions happening. You've got the pandemic, nothing will be the same anymore. You've got Black Lives Matter, nothing will be same anymore. Your first year students who went to the second year were going on a particular journey that they knew when they first set foot at Columbia. And then, and now the journey and the destination is unknown. What is that doing to the syllabus, and what is that doing to the expectations that the school and the students have of one another? In terms of a well, what did we come here to learn, and what do we now need to leave with?
Yeah, that's very up in the air, right? I don't think that the first years who deferred are in complete denial, but they are very clearly hoping that things will be back to normal next year, that at least next fall, if they start with us, they have a better chance of starting the way they had hoped. This is what they're hoping for. They understand that it may not happen. And that's where they are. For us as a faculty, it has been absolute hell, because sitting between the students and the administration, the needs being in complete opposition, and Columbia University is a mammoth organization where there are levels after levels after. It's like going down a black hole to try and get something approved, or to know where the disapproval came from, or to know who to ask for what. So we've been trying to, sometimes not so pleasantly and sometimes surprisingly pleasantly, been trying to figure out, I think, this is my way of thinking. I think that my boss would name it differently, but I think we've been trying to figure out how to communicate effectively. And we are tasked with coming up with decisions and plans in a situation that is moving and unknown. So the way we've dealt with it is we finally figured out we need to get to how are we getting to the end of the semester? Are we having productions? Our productions, very quickly, productions were suspended. Even thesis productions that they thought were going up, was suspended. Some of the schools got in their showcase. A lot of the schools didn't get in the showcase for the graduating class. There's a tradition of showcasing, which is, again, a whole nother thing. But the students feel that if they don't get that showcase, then they don't get the introduction that they deserve after their graduate education to the business and to agents. So what we are now doing, and we followed suit, talking about generosity, the theater departments across all the universities, the sister universities, have shared information so generously, so kindly, and really been trying to work this out together. So showcases are now being done. My students will now be starting to film their showcases, talk about an effective scene at home. Design people will come in to help them set up their space. Technical people will work on removing the line, and they will do scenes. And I believe that NYU has already done this effectively. Their showcase has gone out.
Oh, we can see those online?
I don't know if it's available publicly online, but you can check it out.
I will.
So our students are doing that. We had to decide about things like performances. Every department, direction, production, stage management has made a slightly different decision to acting. Acting was like the unhelpful little sister that kept providing problems because we're concerned about contact. So we are creating a whole new syllabus. We're using the opportunity to do a lot more collaborating because we found that worked. Shorter classes. And we, rather than trying to make, this was the thing that we took a while getting to, rather than trying to make the old thing work in the new situation, we decided to scrap the old thing and make a new syllabus, which is what we're still working on. We're talking about updating the kind of text we use, finding classical text. Like, we never want to get rid of Shakespeare. We never want to get rid of Ibsen, right? But we can't just have one Black writer. We can't just have one BIPOC writer. So we're all reading, we're all coming together and saying, what can we bring in that we feel we can direct? If we can't direct them in this, then who can we bring in? And we're doing shorter segments of things, and we're trying out new material. That's what we're doing. And we're just going to get to the end of fall to see how that went. We'll get together again to figure out if Zoom went okay, or if we have to again adjust things. And we'll talk with the students. We have 2 representatives from each class. You talk to the whole class and the thing falls apart.
Yeah, okay.
But 2 reps from each class, each cohort, and talk to the full-time faculty, which is 5 of us. And we keep fixing and changing and meeting each other. I think it's going to be very rough. I mean, honestly, with the Black Lives Matter thing, it's going to be a very rough semester. Plus the new, platform. But at this point, we're like, bring it on 1 minute at a time. Feldenkrais talks about successive approximations, that we learn in successive approximations, and I love this. If you can do something, then you didn't need to learn it because you already know it. If you're learning it, it means you don't know what you're doing. And so you try something, you take forward what works, you leave back what didn't work, you add something new, and this is how you finally get to know a thing inside out. And I think this is one of those things, and it's a thing without an end. It's going to just be a process of successive approximations. And I just believe that if we keep talking with everyone involved and keep redefining more often what our objectives are, why we are here, because I'm questioning that, honestly. I'm questioning about why I am in theater anymore. Not just because of the pandemic. So I need to clarify why I'm coming into the room, because that also affects what I bring into the room. And I think those things will change more often for all of us at this time, because there's a disruption to our lives on every level.
I think that's a great note with which to, I mean, I thought I was bringing you in purely for practical frontline experience, but it turns out that there's absolute, you've given us a lot of food for thought at the entire level of thinking about this at an existential space as well. And what a great note to sort of end on, I think. I know we had a question more, so I'll just say this and quickly, apart from my thank you so much for everyone for participating and being here and patiently sitting through another 1 hour, 15 minutes of Zoom on a Thursday afternoon. Next week, we have Amy Russell, who's here, and she's also currently teaching her second ever Zoom workshop after multiple years of pedagogy in the real present live space. And for the first time, Chanakya Vyas, who's the artistic director of Indian Ensemble and an ex-student of Amy's, will be sitting in my chair, and I can just sit back and watch and ask questions, which I'm also looking forward to, but I might badger every now and then. All of you, for those of you who've been coming regularly, you've seen each other's faces in the room. If you ever want to reach out to one another, just come through me and I'll make the introductions. I don't think I should just put everyone's names on a list for everyone to just sort of look at. So I'll make the introductions, and the main thing is that we start seeing each other. We as a drama school in Mumbai have got a lot out of these talks. We hope that the people coming and speaking have used this time also to further reflect on their own practice. I hope, Sita, this was useful to you as well.
Fantastic.
Great, I'm so glad.
Pages of things to think about for the next few weeks.
Wonderful. Please, Falguni over here, who's writing articles on our behalf, will probably reach out to you and say, share me those pages. But the other thing was that we all see each other, because I think it's really important that we're not doing this all in isolation, and that we have the spirit of collaboration continuing amongst all of us. Soon enough, there will be people in voice. I'm trying to also see if Edward Hicks from the Oxford School of Drama can come in. They have unique problems and unique situations, and it'll be interesting to hear their stories. And beyond that, a few more, because I have the help of Daniel Goldman also, who's helping me curate people from Latin America. Hi, Daniel. I will bring you in for that. So thank you, everyone. And really, these conversations are available if you need to take them from us. Shruti can help you. Just email us in and we will respond. And if you have people you'd like to see in the chair, and if you're also willing to be the person on the other side asking the questions, please do reach out to me. I am Jehan at thedramaschoolmumbai.in. And thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing my information with me.
Yeah. Did I share your information? Oh, sorry. And Sita, do you want?
Jehan, are you still there?
Yeah, I can hear.
I just wanted to know what was the email ID that I should write to if I wanted a recording of the session? The email ID.
Yeah, you can write to me directly, Nikita.
Okay, great. I shall. Thank you so much again.
Thanks. Bye, Amy. Thank you for staying. Bye, Aiden.
Thank you, Jehan. Thank you, Sita. Really, really wonderful. Thank you.